Greetings and welcome to this video about working with your research supervisor. It is clearly targeted to our dearly beloved postgraduate students with the hope that it can help shed some light in some of the problems you may be experiencing currently with your thesis and with your supervisor, more to be more specific. Okay, right. The things we hope to talk about today are the perceptions that students have about their supervisors. We hope to look at examining their possible reactions, just to report on what they have told us, how they have reacted, and probably what could be the best way to react. And then we will look at some general tips to improve the relationship with your research supervisor. What we also did was to consult a very experienced research supervisor from our college who was kind enough to share his insight. And then we look at what he has to say and the suggestions that he is sharing with us. Right, first things first, let us quickly look at the disclaimer about this video or about the content that is available online, that it is meant for informational purposes only. It is not to supplement or to substitute the knowledge or skill or judgment by a qualified professional, and it is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And we encourage people to always seek professional advice before making any major decisions about their health. Right. Furthermore, we believe the information that we are presenting is from reliable sources, but we don't take, cannot fully guarantee the accuracy of the information. And the information again is not covering every area of mental health or mental health issues, but it is for information like we said earlier. But if you are in a crisis or you think you may have an emergency, call your doctor or report to your nearest hospital immediately, or contact RMS, which is available 24 hours. They can direct you appropriately, and they can be contacted on the following numbers in Pietermaritzburg, Westville, Howard College. Furthermore, you can also contact Lifeline from the following numbers. And if you're having any suicidal thoughts, you may also call the SADC Suicide Crisis Line, and the number is 0800 567 567. Okay, let's get on what some students said to us about their supervisors. Okay, some students have really positive stories to tell about their supervisors who were good managers, and they became lifelong friends even after the thesis was completed. And this is what we hope will happen to each and every postgraduate student. But unfortunately, there are students who are reporting negative stories from their supervisors who complain that supervisors do not see them regularly. Some supervisors show little interest in their work. Some supervisors seem to be making unrealistic demands on their progress. Some don't put them in touch with other students or network for support. But the most important issue that we have come across is that sometimes supervisors provide harsh, confusing, or no feedback at all. But mostly the harsh and confusing feedback is the one that has mainly been reported a bit more than others. Okay. Now let us quickly look at how some students react when they receive such feedback that is confusing, that is harsh, sometimes some students just opt for avoidance. And this could come from different places. It could be coming from a place of shame, because the student will feel like, I've disappointed my supervisor and he's not happy with me. And instead of going back, the student will just keep quiet and just hope things will work out for themselves. But some, it could be because the student feels confused about the feedback that he is receiving from the supervisor. We do not advocate for avoidance, good people. Other students will opt for aggression, where they just respond harshly to the supervisor. Like if the feedback was they deemed to be harsh, they respond in that manner as well. We also don't advocate for that. But what we are advocating for is assertiveness, where there is a clear communication between supervisor and supervisee, and there is respect from both parties. This is what we hope will happen or should happen. Right. Quickly, on some general tips that we have shared with some of our postgraduate students that have come to see us, right, is around negotiating the supervisor and supervisee contracts, or revisiting it, assuming that before the supervision began, there was a contract, maybe revisiting it to check if are you guys being able to keep to what you agreed upon. Like we said earlier, we do not like passiveness or passivity. We encourage people to be proactive, and again, to communicate clearly and regularly with their supervisor. Now, some tips on how to respond to negative feedback, because yeah, things will not always be nice between you and your supervisor. So how best to respond to negative feedback? Right. The first thing we recommend is that you do not feel like you are being personally attacked. And then we implore you to react rationally rather than emotionally, and that you do not respond immediately when you are feeling, maybe it made you feel, yeah, we urge you not to respond immediately. And then we ask you to be patient, with the hope that with time, the quality of your research will improve. And then it is always a good idea to discuss with your peers and other seniors on how they have handled negative feedback, or how to handle feedback. If all these fail, you are more than welcome to book a session with one of our counselors, and the details will follow at the end. Right. If you have tried all these different suggestions and you don't seem to be getting anywhere with your supervisor, the last result will be to escalate the query or the problem by using your departmental structures to voice your concerns. Right, like we promised you earlier that we had some insight from a very highly esteemed supervisor, and this is what he had to say. He recommended that postgraduate students should start their studies with a clear idea of the end point of their research, of what they expect to see at the end. And he went on to say, sometimes postgraduate students will keep working because their supervisor never says this is enough. In some cases, the supervisor will encourage the student, just do a little more research, please. So the thesis will stretch on and on. And these are some of the reasons he stated as why some thesis will stretch on and on. Sometimes the supervisor is well driven and he wants to publish, and then in that regard he will put a lot of pressure on the student to push him so that they could publish. Sometimes it could be that the supervisor is concerned that the student might fail, or the thesis might be heavily criticized by the thesis examiners, which might reflect negatively on the supervisor. So that's why he would push the student to work a bit more. So they push the student to perfect everything and do much more than what is required because of this academic rigor. Right. Furthermore, on the perfectionism by postgraduate students, he went on to say this at times from the student side, it can be driven by insecurity and the fear of being judged by examiners. He went on to say it usually applies to hard-working and diligent students, which can be a major delay for handing in the thesis in time. Maybe some of us are familiar with learning styles, but if you're not very familiar, there are 4, but I won't go through all of them, but I'll just pick one which speaks very well to this issue of perfectionism, which is called the assimilator. And some of the traits that are here about the assimilator is that assimilators tend to collect too much information and they do not use other people enough. They just keep working by themselves. And sometimes they need too much information before getting down to work. So if you are an assimilator, be aware it's something you need to work on. And because if you don't work on it, it could affect the delay of your thesis being handed in. Right. So what the professor just suggested was that it helps if the supervisor takes charge of the expected standard of perfection. Right. A little bit more about procrastination, which is a major problem with most students, right? Where the student will do all the required research but procrastinate on the write-up of the thesis, endlessly pretending to seek perfection. Some of the few things that we recommend from our side is that if you are struggling with procrastination, maybe set some minor goals and promise yourself some reward for achieving those minor milestones, or you can ask somebody to check up on you on your progress, and then most importantly, try and get the least pleasant task done first while you still have energy and you're still fresh. Right. Finally, some solutions that were suggested by our supervisor was that it is a good idea to get each chapter published as soon as they are completed, because this provides editorial and reviewer corrections, which are extremely helpful. And this has 2 wonderful outcomes. You will get your thesis finished quickly, and you get journal publications out of this thesis rapidly. Right. Again, as part of wrapping up, there was the suggestion of having a clear roadmap from the beginning of where you are going. And then maybe lastly, it is always a good idea to not only have one supervisor, to have a team like a senior or supporting supervisor. It always helps to have 2 instead of having 1. Lastly, if you want to contact us for anything around the topic we're talking about, or any of the things you just wish to have a space to talk about, somebody who will speak to you without judging you and confidentially, you can book counseling on this website, cas-ukzn.program.com, or you can visit our website, aessupport.ukzn.ac.za, or you can visit our Facebook page, UKZN-CAS-Student Support Services. Or on Mondays to Friday, you can call us on 0800 800 017 from 8 in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this video and it will help you to deal especially with negative feedback from your supervisor. Lastly, please do not take things personally. Take time to respond, and when you respond in an assertive way. Don't be passive, don't be aggressive, but be assertive. All the best. Thank you very much.